My wife abandoned me with a note and $15,000 gone. Months later, she came back begging for help. But when I found out her lover scammed her and she asked to move back in, my answer left her broken. I'm 34 years old, work in tech for a software company, and what happened 6 months ago basically destroyed my marriage and completely changed my life. I don't know why I feel the need to tell this now. I guess because I finally reached a point where I can talk about it without feeling like I'm going to have a panic attack, you know? And, well, here we are. I should start at the beginning, or at least what I thought was the beginning of my normal life. I married Amanda like 7 years ago. I think it was in May 2018, yeah. It was definitely in May, because I remember it was horribly hot that day, and my suit was black, and I thought I was going to pass out during the ceremony. She was 25 then, I was 27, and honestly everything seemed perfect. You know, one of those relationships where you think you found the right person and nothing can go wrong. We met in college, like at a party thrown by some mutual friends, and she was studying graphic design while I was finishing my computer science degree. She was fun, smart, we had the same taste in movies and music, and we basically spent all our time together. We moved in together like a year after we started dating. A small apartment near campus that cost a fortune, but we loved it because it had a balcony where we'd sit and drink coffee on Sunday mornings. 2 years later, when we both got decent jobs, me at a startup that ended up being acquired by a bigger company and her at a design agency, we decided to get married. Everyone said we were the perfect couple, that you could see we really loved each other, and I really believed it. Literally, there was no sign that anything was wrong, or maybe there were signs and I was too stupid to see them. I don't know. Ava was born 3 years after we got married, so like 5 years ago, and it was planned, you know? It wasn't an accident or anything like that. Amanda and I literally sat down and said, okay, it's time to have a baby. We have stable jobs, a decent house we bought in the suburbs, everything was ready. The pregnancy was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. She's an incredible kid. Seriously. She's 5 now, and super smart and funny, and I love her more than anything in this world. The first years with Ava were difficult, I'm not gonna lie, because babies are exhausting, and Amanda left her job to stay home with her while I worked from home most of the time. I thought we were handling it well. Like, we had our occasional fights like all couples, but nothing serious, nothing that made me think our marriage was in trouble. Amanda went back to work part-time when Ava started kindergarten, like 6 months ago, right before everything exploded. She got a remote job with a different design agency, and she seemed happy with that, or so I thought. Looking back, I guess I should have noticed something was weird. Amanda started spending a lot more time on her phone, like obsessively, and when I asked her what she was doing, she'd say she was checking work stuff or messaging with Stephanie, her best friend from college. She also started going out more, like getting coffee with friends or going to the gym, which I thought was great because I thought she was finally having time for herself after years of focusing only on being a mom. I even told her, go, enjoy, I'll stay with Ava, no problem. What an idiot I was, seriously. The day everything changed was a Tuesday. I remember it perfectly because it was my day to work from the office and I usually got home around 6 in the evening. That day, I got home early, like 4:30, because I'd canceled a meeting and thought, great, I'll surprise Amanda and Ava and we can do something together. Maybe go to the park or order pizza. I walked into the house and the silence was weird, you know? Normally, when I got home, I'd hear Ava playing or watching TV, or Amanda in the kitchen making dinner, but there was no noise at all. I went upstairs and went to Ava's room, and there was my mom with her, playing with some blocks. I was like, that's weird. Why is my mom here? And she saw me, and the look on her face was, I don't know, pity mixed with worry. She said, Christopher, we need to talk. And I was like, what's going on? Where's Amanda? And she just said, she's downstairs at the dining table. There's a note. My heart started beating super fast, and I ran downstairs, and there it was, a handwritten note on the paper we used for shopping lists, taped to the table. The note said something like, Christopher, I need time for myself. I'm leaving for a while. I don't know how long. Please don't look for me. I need to figure out who I am outside of being a wife and mother. Take care of Ava. She needs you. And that was it. She didn't even sign her name or anything, just those few lines that basically destroyed my world in 2 seconds. I stood there reading it over and over, thinking that maybe I'd misunderstood, that maybe it was a bad joke or a misunderstanding. But no, it was real. My mom explained that Amanda had called her around 2 in the afternoon, asked her to come take care of Ava because she had to leave urgently, and when my mom arrived, Amanda already had a suitcase packed and left without much explanation, just said she needed space and that I'd understand when I read the note. My mom stayed because she didn't want to leave Ava alone and also didn't know how to contact me without making me panic in the middle of work. The next few hours were a blur. Honestly. I called Amanda like 1,000 times. All the messages said delivered, but she didn't respond to any of them. I called Stephanie, her best friend, and she was as confused as me. Said she had no idea Amanda was planning something like this and that it had been like 2 weeks since they'd talked because she'd been super busy with work. I called Amanda's parents, who live in another state, and they didn't know anything either. I freaked out when I told them and said they were going to try to reach her. My brother Nathan came that night after my mom took Ava to her house to sleep there because I was a mess and didn't want her to see me like that. Nathan is like 3 years older than me and has always been the practical one in the family, the one who keeps a cool head in crises. He sat with me in the living room and said, "Look, I know you're devastated, but you need to start thinking practically here. Check the bank accounts, check her credit card, make sure she's not taking money or doing something that could affect you financially." And he was right, of course. The next day, Wednesday, I got up early after barely sleeping at all and checked our shared bank accounts. Amanda had withdrawn $15,000 from our savings account 2 days earlier, on Sunday, when I was at the park with Ava all afternoon. $15,000, like half of our savings that we'd accumulated over years for emergencies and for Ava's future. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, because that meant this wasn't something impulsive. This was planned. She knew exactly what she was going to do. I spent the next few days on autopilot, trying to stay functional for Ava, while inside I was falling apart. My parents were incredible, honestly. They took turns staying with me and helping me with Ava, taking her to kindergarten, picking her up, making dinner. I could barely concentrate on work, and my boss was understanding when I vaguely explained I was going through a family crisis. I told Ava that Mommy had gone on a work trip. I didn't know what else to tell her. She's only 5 years old. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother abandoned her? Like a week later, I was sitting in my home office, trying to work, but really just staring at the screen, doing nothing, when my phone notified me of an Instagram post. I don't follow social media much, but I had notifications on for Amanda because sometimes she'd post photos of Ava that I wanted to see. The post was of her, at the beach, in a new bathing suit I'd never seen, smiling at the camera with the sun setting behind her. The caption said, "Finally feeling free," with a heart emoji and a wave emoji. I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't process what I was seeing. My wife, who had abandoned our 5-year-old daughter and left me a note saying she needed to find herself, was at the damn beach, posting photos like she was on a dream vacation. The comments were from people I didn't know, saying things like, "You look amazing," or "Enjoy your freedom, queen," and I just thought, these people have no idea there's a little girl at home wondering when her mom is coming back. That night, after putting Ava to bed, I did something I should probably feel bad about, but honestly, I don't regret. I logged into Amanda's laptop, which she'd left on her desk, and opened her email. I knew her password because we used the same passwords for almost everything. One of those mistakes couples make when they completely trust each other. And there it all was. Like literally everything I needed to see to understand what the hell had happened. There were notifications from dating apps, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, all with unread messages. There were emails from these apps confirming she'd created accounts, some from like 3 months ago. 3 months that she'd been using these apps while I thought we were fine, while I was taking care of our daughter and working to support the family. There were saved conversations in her drafts folder with different men, planning meetups, talking about hotels, things that made me physically sick. But the worst part, what really destroyed me, was when I found a link to a shared Google photo album. I opened it, and they were photos of Amanda with different men, at restaurants, at bars, in what looked like hotel rooms. There was one with a guy who looked about my age, both of them hugging and smiling. Another with someone different, kissing her on the cheek. There were like 20 photos total, all from the last 2 or 3 months. All evidence that my wife had been living a completely secret life while I had no idea. I stayed up all night reading those emails and looking at those photos, and I went through every emotion possible. First, I was in shock, like my brain couldn't process that this was real. Then came anger. A rage so intense I had to leave the house and walk down the street at 3 in the morning just to not break something. Then came sadness. I cried more that night than I'd cried in my entire adult life, thinking about all the years I'd wasted, all the lies I'd swallowed. And finally, like at dawn, came something like clarity or resignation. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was like, okay, this is what it is. I need to protect my daughter and protect myself. Friday of that same week, I called a lawyer Nathan had recommended. He was an older guy, like 60 years old, who'd handled a friend of his divorce and apparently was very good. I sat in his office, which was downtown in an old but well-maintained building, and told him everything. I showed him the note. I showed him the screenshots I'd taken of Amanda's emails and photos. I explained about the money she'd withdrawn. He took notes on his laptop while I talked, and when I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Well, Christopher, this is pretty clear. You have enough evidence for an at-fault divorce, and given the child abandonment, it's very likely you'll get full custody." He explained the process. That first we needed to locate her officially to serve her with divorce papers. That we could ask for her to return the money she'd taken. That we could request child support from her for Ava, given that she'd abandoned her. He told me to document everything, every attempt at communication, every expense related to Ava, every day that passed without Amanda getting in touch. He also warned me I should prepare for a potentially long and emotional battle, because these abandonment cases sometimes got ugly when the other party finally responded. I left that meeting feeling a little better, like at least there was a plan. There were concrete steps I could follow instead of just sitting at home wondering what had gone wrong. I started documenting everything like the lawyer had told me. I'd write every night in a Word document what had happened that day, the questions Ava asked about her mom and how I responded, my attempts to contact Amanda, everything. Like 2 months passed without a word from her. Not a message, not a call, nothing. Her parents couldn't contact her either, or at least, that's what they told me. Ava started asking less about her mom, which on one hand relieved me because it meant she was adapting, but on the other hand broke my heart because a 5-year-old shouldn't have to adapt to her mother abandoning her. I started taking her to therapy with a child psychologist the pediatrician recommended, because I wanted to make sure she was processing all this in a healthy way and not just repressing it. I also started going to therapy, with a different therapist my primary care doctor recommended. The first sessions were weird, like I didn't know what to say or how to start, but little by little I learned to process all the betrayal and abandonment without letting myself be consumed by rage. The therapist told me it was normal to feel every possible way, that there was no right way to deal with this, that the important thing was not to repress emotions but also not let them paralyze me. Then came Thanksgiving, like 3 months after Amanda left. My parents had insisted we go to their house for dinner, said we needed to be with family and that it wasn't good for Ava and me to be alone at home on a holiday. We went around 2 in the afternoon. Ava was excited because my parents have a dog and she loves him, and the house was full of family. My uncles, my cousins. Everyone vaguely knew what had happened, but nobody asked directly, which I appreciated. We were all in the living room, before dinner, when the doorbell rang. My dad went to answer it, and suddenly I heard her voice, Amanda's voice, saying, "Hi, Jack, happy Thanksgiving." I froze. I literally felt like my entire body had turned to stone. Ava ran toward the door yelling "Mommy," and I could hear Amanda saying, "Hi, sweetie, I missed you so much." Amanda walked into the living room like nothing had happened, like she hadn't disappeared for 3 complete months without a word. She looked different. She'd lost weight, cut her hair, was wearing clothes I'd never seen. She smiled like she was arriving at any normal family gathering, greeted everyone, asked how they were, like this was completely normal. My parents were as much in shock as me. Nobody knew what to say or do. Finally, Nathan, my brother, said what we were all thinking. Amanda, what the hell are you doing here? He said, and she was like, I thought it would be nice to spend the holiday with my family. Nathan literally laughed, but it was a bitter laugh, and said, Your family, you abandoned your family 3 months ago. Amanda made an offended face and said, I needed time for myself. I already explained that to Christopher in my note. I got up from the couch because I felt like if I stayed sitting, I was going to explode. I told Ava to go play with the dog outside with my mom, and although she didn't want to leave Amanda, she eventually went out. Then I turned to Amanda and asked her, What do you want? Why are you here? She sat on the couch like she was in her own house and said, I wanted to see Ava. Wanted to see how you guys were doing. Nathan said, You haven't contacted Christopher in 3 months. You haven't asked about your daughter once, and now you show up like nothing. Amanda defended herself, saying she'd been busy finding herself, that she'd been traveling and thinking about her life, and that now she felt ready to reconnect. I asked her directly, Have you been traveling? Or have you been using dating apps and seeing other men? The look on her face was, I don't know, like surprised but also caught, you know? She said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, Amanda, I found your emails. I found the photos. I know exactly what you've been doing these months. She went quiet for a moment and then said, You're invading my privacy. And I literally laughed. Because how can you talk about privacy when you abandoned your daughter and emptied our savings account? Dinner was super awkward, to say the least. Amanda stayed. My parents didn't know how to ask her to leave without making a scene in front of Ava, and we all ate in a tense silence, interrupted only by Ava's innocent conversation about school and her toys. Amanda acted like everything was normal, asking Ava about her classes, laughing when Ava told funny stories, but she didn't show even an ounce of remorse or shame for what she'd done. After dinner, Amanda told me she wanted to talk alone. We went out to the back patio. It was November and cold, but she didn't seem to notice. She told me she wanted to explain things to me, that she felt I deserved an explanation. I told her it was a bit late for explanations, that I'd already started the divorce process and that my lawyer would be contacting her soon. She was like, We don't need to go there. We can work on our marriage. And I just looked at her like, Seriously? You think after all this, I'd want to work on anything with you? She told me she'd made mistakes, that she'd felt trapped in the role of wife and mother, and that she'd needed to explore who she was outside of that. I said, Explore? Is that what you call cheating on your husband and abandoning your daughter? And she got defensive, saying she hadn't technically cheated because she'd already decided the marriage was over before she started seeing other people. The logic was so twisted I couldn't even respond. I just shook my head. Before leaving that night, Amanda hugged Ava for a long time and told her she loved her, that they'd see each other more often soon. Ava asked her, Are you coming home, Mommy? And Amanda looked at me before answering her. I don't know, honey. Mommy and Daddy are figuring some things out. Then she left in her car, a new Toyota I didn't recognize, and that she'd probably bought with the money she took from our account. And the next few weeks were weird. Amanda didn't try to contact me directly, but started sending occasional messages, asking about Ava, asking for photos, saying she wanted video calls. I consulted with my lawyer, and he told me to respond but keep everything documented, not to deny access, but also not to make things easier than legally necessary. So I'd respond to her messages with short answers, send her photos of Ava when she asked, coordinate short video calls where Ava talked to her but always under my supervision. In January, like 2 months after Thanksgiving, Amanda sent me a message saying she needed to talk to me urgently if we could meet somewhere neutral. I told her I'd only talk to her if it was about the divorce or about Ava, nothing else. She said it was important, that she really needed my help with something. I hesitated a lot, but finally agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near where my parents live, a public place where I knew she couldn't make a scene. I got to the coffee shop on a Saturday afternoon. Ava was with my parents. Amanda was already there, sitting at a table in the back, and when I got closer, I noticed she looked different again, like more tired, less polished than she'd looked at Thanksgiving. We sat down and I ordered coffee. She already had one in front of her that looked like she hadn't even touched. She started by saying she'd made terrible mistakes, that she knew it, that she didn't expect me to forgive her but she needed help. I asked her, what kind of help? And She basically explained that one of the guys she'd been seeing had scammed her. Apparently, he'd borrowed money from her, like $8,000, promising to pay it back soon because he was waiting for an inheritance or some story like that, and then he disappeared. Wasn't answering her calls, had blocked her number, basically had stolen her money. I sat there processing this, thinking, seriously? Did she expect me to feel sorry for her after everything she'd done? I asked her, and you're telling me this why? And she said she had no money, that she'd spent everything she'd taken from our account plus her own savings, that she was living on a friend's couch and needed help getting out of that situation. Then came the real reason for the meeting. Amanda asked me if she could come back home temporarily, like for a few months, just until she recovered financially and could get her own place. She said she could sleep in the guest room, that she wouldn't bother anyone, that she just needed a place to stay and time to reorganize her life. She also said it would be good for Ava, that the girl missed her, and that it would be beneficial for everyone. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman, who had been my wife for 7 years, the mother of my daughter, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not pity, just complete emptiness. I told her, Amanda, you left me with a 3-line note. You didn't contact your daughter for months. You cheated on me with multiple men. You emptied our savings account. And now that your adventure went wrong, you want to come back like nothing happened. She started saying it wasn't like that she really regretted it, that she'd been selfish and wanted to make things right. I told her if she really regretted it and wanted to make things right, she'd sign the divorce papers without fighting, to accept a reasonable custody agreement where she could see Ava regularly under supervision until she proved she was stable, and return at least part of the money she'd taken. She told me she couldn't return the money because she didn't have it, and I said, then work and pay it back little by little, but I'm not going to let you come back to my house and pretend we're a family. I explained that Ava was finally stabilizing, that therapy was helping, that she was learning to trust that I wasn't going to leave her, and that bringing Amanda back only for her to leave again when it suited her would be cruel to the girl. Amanda started crying, saying she had nowhere to go, that her friend was going to kick her out of the apartment soon, that her family didn't want to help her because they were disappointed in her. I told her those were consequences of her own decisions, that I had to protect my daughter and protect myself, and that letting her come back would be the opposite of that. I gave her my lawyer's contact and told her any future communication about the divorce or about Ava had to be through him. I got up to leave, and she said, my name, Christopher, please, with a voice that sounded desperate. I turned around and told her, Amanda, I hope you find a way out of this situation. I really do, but it's not going to be with me helping you after everything you did. I walked out of the coffee shop and walked to my car, and as I drove back to my parents' house, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, like a weight lifting off my shoulders. That night, after putting Ava to bed in my house, I sat in the living room with a beer and thought about everything that had happened. I thought about how I'd been so sure Amanda was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with, how I'd never seen any of this coming. I thought about all the moments I'd probably ignored signs, all the times I'd chosen to believe her excuses because it was easier than facing the truth. But I also thought about Ava, about how despite all this, she was okay. She was laughing again. She was making friends at school. She trusted me to take care of her. I thought about my parents and Nathan, about how they'd supported me without judging, how they'd been there every step of the way. I thought about my therapist telling me I was doing the right thing, that protecting my boundaries and protecting my daughter wasn't selfish but necessary. The divorce was finalized like 3 months after that meeting at the coffee shop. Amanda eventually signed the papers, after my lawyer explained to her that fighting would only make things more expensive and longer for everyone. I got full custody of Ava, with supervised visits for Amanda every 2 weeks, though so far she's only come to like half of them. I didn't get back the money she took. My lawyer said it wasn't worth fighting for it, given that she had no way to pay it. So I let it go. Like 2 weeks ago, Ava asked me if Mommy was ever coming back to live with us. We were having dinner, just the 2 of us. Pasta with tomato sauce, which is her favorite food. I told her the truth. That no, that Mommy and I weren't going to be married anymore, but that she would always have both Mommy and me, just in separate houses. She thought about it for a moment, chewing her pasta, and then said, It's okay, Daddy. I'm fine here with you anyway. And that's enough for now, I guess. I don't know what's going to happen long term. If Amanda is going to be a constant presence in Ave's life, or if she's going to keep being inconsistent. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust someone enough to have another serious relationship, or if this left me too damaged for that. What I do know is that I made the right decision when I told Amanda no at that coffee shop, when I chose to protect my daughter and myself instead of letting myself be manipulated by guilt or pity. Sometimes, at night, when Ava's already asleep, I sit on the back porch with coffee and think about everything I lost, but also everything I gained. I lost a marriage I thought was real but clearly wasn't. I lost the illusion that I had a perfect family. But I gained clarity. I gained strength I didn't know I had. And I gained a deeper relationship with my daughter because now I'm her only constant, and I take that role very seriously. And that, after all this mess, is something I can be proud of.